Okay, welcome one, welcome all to our business meeting number 2. So, if you attended the actual meeting, you would have noticed that my Wi-Fi connection was really bad. So I'm just using this recording to sort of send across what I was going to put inside of the meeting. Obviously, in the meeting I said it was going to be short, so when I actually put it into a recording format without your guys' input, it's going to be even shorter, so I apologize for that. Again, this is probably going to be the last meeting we have as a business team. That's not even a meeting, it's a recording, and that's pretty weird, but we are going to have a few text announcements, and I will make those sort of documents clear to you guys, and I'll send it up next week when we set everything up for the competition. But this is just the sort of last lesson learning part of it, because it's really just the gist of everything we need to cover. Business is, like I said before, partly common sense, partly not so common sense. So we can sort of assume a lot of things. Again, if you have any questions about the contents of this video or anything else, feel free to send them to me on Discord or just email it to us or put it in the YouTube comments if you're watching on YouTube. Okay, let's continue. So, Business Part 2, how to connect with partners. So what is networking? Networking is pretty important. You see a lot of people throwing the term around, especially when talking about social medias like LinkedIn. There's a lot of talk about networking there, but there's also networking at events, and you see that there are people who are sort of like really fixated on the term. So what really is networking? Networking is, you can sort of envision it as connecting with other people to sort of get things from them and have them take things from you. So it's basically just building professional connections with people. We can imagine networking like a physical computer network connection. And so with computer network connections, it typically happens in 3 steps. So I'll actually cover the steps and what exactly they would mean in the implications of like professional business relationships. So there's the initial encounter or the initial ping on a computer, and so first contact is essential, especially when people are dealing with larger, especially when you're dealing with larger corporations or people that are busy, right? So people who are always who don't really have a lot of time to read through their email and check every single one detailed, like in a lot of detail. You want to make sure that you have this initial encounter with them, and you want to make sure it sticks with them, right? That they don't just disregard the email, that they continue reading through the email and say, "Oh wow, yeah, this is really interesting," or they meet you at an event, they're like, "Oh wow, this is really interesting. I kind of want to invest in you," right? And you can tell it from their body language in person, but we'll get to that later in the presentation. So the best medium to use upon first contact is crucial. So if in person, a firm handshake and interview rules apply. And so what I mean by that is, if you guys have taken the careers course, you'll know how important a firm handshake is. It's sort of giving off how confident you are in yourself and how confident you are in your abilities, along with if you're over eager or not eager at all, right? So it's good to have a nice firm handshake, not like squeezing their bones, but just a nice firm handshake. And by the other interview rules, I mean looking at them. I'm not staring into their eyes, but making sure that there's a steady amount of eye contact being made, hand gestures, and just ways you can communicate and express yourself easily so that they don't get distracted and you're not talking in a monotonous voice like I am right now, which is fun. If online, emails would be preferred. Obviously, there are different ways to contact them. You could try to make the initial connection through a social media account, but you don't know who's running the social media account. It might be their social media manager, which might cause a few issues. So we really want to make sure that we're contacting them professionally and as a team. So emails would be preferred. And I'll build upon the email point and how we're going to have that work this year in the next few slides, but just for now, the emails would be preferred, and that's all you need to know about the initial encounter. And so use any connection you have with the employees or company to grab hold of this first impression. And so what I mean by this is you want to make sure that you know them somehow. Not make sure, but it would be really nice for you to know them somehow, right? So if you know, let's say you're talking to a bigger company and you know an intern who goes there because of your high school friend or something, then you can essentially, you have a point in, you have a point of entry. You can say, oh yeah, so I got your contact through this guy who is an intern, or this person who is an intern at your company, and I would really appreciate it if you look into sponsoring our robotics team, which this person also went to, right? And so we can use this first contact, or not first contact, we can use this contact to sort of boost up our first impression and make sure that they really pay attention to what's inside of it, because we know someone inside of their company, or we know something about their company that's important to them. This will typically ensure that people read the full email, like I said, and really consider communicating back with us. So if they know that we're talking about someone who, an intern that works at their company, or someone who they know, then they really do want to communicate back with us so that they don't lose that connection with the person that we know, which is essential. Next step in the process would be establishing communications. So within your computer, this is making sure you get a reply back from them and just sending another ping to make sure. So once first contact has been made and a reply has been garnered, we need to make sure that there's constant communication being done. And so the reply that is garnered may be very direct. So if we ask for a sponsorship on first contact, which isn't always the best idea, but we could always say, would you be interested in sponsoring? And we can ask, oh, do you need more information? Which is something that is pretty standard. And they say, yeah, I'd be interested in sponsoring without really reading through the information. That's a very unlikely situation, but if that does happen, then that's basically, it's done. Our process is done. But again, very unlikely, and we want to make sure that our partners care about us as much as we care about them. So always make sure that the reply is sort of asking a question back, asking for information, so you can give the information back, and there's established communications, right? So constant communication. It doesn't have to be constant pestering emails, but I'll get into that. So like I said, it doesn't have to be constant emails, but we just need to make sure they feel connected with their progress as a team. And so what I mean by that is we want to make sure they're not alienized. We just took their money and left, and we pop up like about 2 months later with a working robot. We want to make sure that they're somehow connected and ingrained into our community so that they feel as if they really have given back to students as a whole, right? And we want to introduce them as well, like that, right? So we can use build logs or blogs. Again, blogs, build logs are different, but it's pretty ironic because build logs and you mix it together, sound like blogs. It's pretty cool. It can be a great way to show them our progress and possibly get their input on it in the comments, right? So in the build logs, we would talk about typically like what we did in the day or in the week, what progress we got done. Again, not too much detail because we don't want to spoil it for the other teams, but just enough detail to sort of give them a general vibe of how our progress is going. So if we say, oh, on this day we implemented our shooter system and it worked pretty well throughout our testing, we might have to make a few changes. In the comments, they can be like, oh, if that's really good progress, right? Like you guys went from a prototype to a shooter design in 2 days. That's really impressive. And so this is sort of just a great way we can get their input, and they can stay connected with us and we can stay connected with them. So it's a good way of establishing the communications. Personalized emails and progress notes can also be made on request. So if they ask for, oh yeah, I remember you guys 3560. I sent you guys over some money a while ago. How's it going? So if they send us an email like this, we can send them a personalized request, and make sure you send them a personalized request. We don't want to send them a auto-generated email or copy paste on that. We want to make sure that they get a personalized request, and maybe we can refer back to some of our build logs and say, oh, I would suggest you check out our build log for a little bit more information. But the blogs are also a good way to garner interest, as to show them how we're doing, and also garner interest from the outside. So if people stumble across our blog, they might be intrigued by what we're doing and what production we've done within our team, right? So it's a good way to get some outside interest as well and preserve interest and communications with people that we've already contacted. And presentations can also help to bring more intimate connections. Again, presentations are done on request, and it's sort of like the company would say, oh yeah, you guys are a pretty cool robotics team. Would you like to do a little presentation about what you're doing and inspire our workers, right? So there are many ways we can sort of get those in-person events done, and in-person events typically tend to work better because if we show off our robot, then we can clearly show off our progress, or if we have a good presentation along with our voices and faces, and a large team with our spiritware, we can really show off how we feel as a team and how we've built a sense of community and how they're a part of this community. So establishing communications is essential. Moving on, we have requests. And so, like all good connections, there will be requests at times that are done on both sides, right? So even on your computers, your computer will request something from the server, and the server will request something from your computer. And so it's a good connection. We want to make sure that this connection, so the person on the other side, the corporate or the person, benefits from us as much as we benefit or as we benefit from them, right? So it might not be equal on terms, but we want to make sure that there's a benefit going on both sides, right? So as any good requests go, it should never be one-sided. And by that I mean we shouldn't always ask money from them or shouldn't always ask for resources from them. They should also be able to ask things from us, like, oh, would you be able to possibly add a sticker on the robot here? Or, oh, would it be possible for us to get a shout out on your blog or website for what we did, right? And so we want to make sure that they can request stuff from us as much as we request stuff from them, just so that we can get that sense of equal and good footing, right? We want our partners to be invested in us just as much as we're invested in them, and that's just exactly why we want to make sure that there is that sort of not one-sided connections. And another key point here is that this is an optional step. Not all connections will lead to or have requests, but if you believe that the connection is strong enough, you can go ahead and ask. And so what I mean by that is basically what I said, but not all connections are going to be our sponsors. And we have to come to terms with that. They'll just be connections. And connections lead to other connections, which is why networks are so important. So let's say we connect to one intern at a company, that intern can connect to their manager or other people that are related to them within that company, and we can get more and more networking within that company until we eventually reach a strength where we're able to say, yeah, look, we know a lot of people within your company, and they've worked with us, we've worked with them. Would it be possible for us to get sponsorship, right? And so the strength, or gauging the strength of a connection, is really how well they talk back with us and how interested they are in our team, right? So if we sent them an email and they sent us a very stale reply that's like, okay, we'll look into it, and they don't respond for 6 months, that's probably a weak connection. And the stronger connections are more like, oh, I read your blog this week, and it's really interesting to see that you guys are actually adding this type of drive system. I really wouldn't expect to see that in high school students, right? So these are the sort of connections that we want to keep. Or these are the strongest connections, and we want to make sure we have a lot more of those than we do of the oh, here's some money in the first reply. Okay, so where to network? Where to network is a pretty I just split it into two parts. So there's the in-person networking. It's good to meet up in person when the world isn't ending, of course, especially in events that allow us to show off and demo a robot. And so what I mean by that is if we show up to a middle school or a middle school fair or something, and we pop in and we do a little presentation on a robot, we can definitely demo it. And to possible sponsors and connections, it's key to see our robot working and just like see what we've done as a team and what they're partnering with and so on and so forth. So it's really important for us to sort of have a final product to show them. And I think that in events where we sort of meet up in person and they can see it and they can see our team, it's also really good. And so these can also be competitions. They don't have to be like presentations. You can also have them in competitions, which is pretty cool. It's good to have teamwear on so that we can show our spirit as a collective team, right? So if everyone's wearing our team t-shirts, then we can sort of be like, yeah, we're 3560, we're like a family, right? We're tight, we're together, and you should partner with us because now you're part of the family too, and we can work together on building a robot, and your contributions are key and essential and so important to us. And they are. I'm not discounting that. It's just this is giving them a sense, more comfort and more, I guess, confidence in our ability as a team. It's also good to have some pamphlets on hand and make sure you talk with them in a firm and confident tone. So if you're talking to them really indifferently and you're just be like, oh, nice, wow, you want to partner with us? Wow, that's so good. Sorry, I'm just a little bit busy. You want to make sure you have time for them. You want to make sure you can give them as much information as they want. So if they ask, oh, how long did it take you to make your robot? You want to make sure you give them a pretty detailed response. Again, you don't want to go on for like 3 hours about how, oh, actually it was only supposed to take 7 weeks, but we messed a few things up, so it took about 8 weeks, and the things that we messed up were blah blah blah. Right? You don't want to go that long. Just a very short explanation of it was supposed to be 7 weeks, but it turned out to be 8. However, most teams use 8 weeks anyways because that's about our build season time. So that's a pretty good answer. Make sure your tone is firm and confident. So if you're talking in a really, really like quiet and shy voice, obviously it's fine to be shy, and there are no issues with that. But we want to make sure that when you're talking to other people in a professional setting, you're confident, your tone is really strong, and you come off as someone who can really hold an argument, not hold an argument, but hold a statement or keep up a team, right? Next, we have online networking, which is a little bit different. So while networking online, it's important to have a consistent email and writing style. So if we're sending them emails from a student and then we switch to a professional account and we do all this email switching, it's going to be really weird if the writing style changes. So in one writing style, we have a lot of exclamation marks. And in the other writing style, the punctuation is just really different. It's really mellow. Then we're going to have a few issues because they're going to note that there's inconsistency, especially in a lot of our transactions. And that might cause some distrust, like, oh, who am I giving money to? Is it the person who first contacted me, like a student email, or should I actually believe this other one? Like, what's happening? So we want to make sure that we have a consistent email and writing style, especially in conversations that involve sponsors that are really paying attention to these details, which are most sponsors. If we start to act unprofessional, such as adding stuff like sent from my iPhone, so we don't really remove that, just has that lazy message on the bottom, then it starts to bring a negative reputation to the team. And another important thing to notice is our networks have their own connections. It's not like everyone's isolated except for us. So if they realize that we're not a very good team, they can actually bring us up in other conversations. Right? So another person could be like, "Oh, I was actually contacted by a really promising 3560 FRC team," and then the other people are like, "Oh, I was actually in talks with them, but their email style was really horrible and just completely broke apart, so we didn't sponsor them." Then they would really be like, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't sponsor them either," right? And so we don't want to lose possible partners or lose credit either. So we want to make sure that everything is consistent and we have a very professional appearance. Make sure we use up-to-date graphics. So we don't want to use our graphics from 2014 because they're sort of maybe possibly outdated. To send across our point so that it seems like we're up with times, right? So if our graphic style is modern, clean, bubbly, what we have today, like proper UX design, then that's good news. And a team that knows what is happening. So we get the sort of sense if we have these modern conventions, especially within our graphics. Okay, so finally, our COVID response. So our COVID response is going to be a little bit weird. Here, I just opened up a form on the screen. And the reason why COVID response is weird is because, it's COVID, and we also have to change a few things. So in terms of having a robot, we don't have one this year, and that's our main, talking piece. Especially when talking to sponsorships, we'd be like, oh yeah, we're building a robot. Here's an image of it, right? Like we'd have a build log. We don't have a build log because that doesn't exist this year. So we use so we're basically going to say we're going to have a robot next year, but we need to buy parts for this year, right? So obviously more text will be given on the Discord, more context and everything. We might do a third lesson just to go over how we're going to set all that up. But the general format is we're going to have an outgoing email form. And the reason why I'm doing this is all about the consistency of the email, right? So we want to make sure that the first contact is done with the email that will be used throughout. And that is our professional 3560 FRC email. Which is, pretty professional, and we want to make sure that we use this one throughout. So please add your contents of the email here. Again, I'll link this form on the classroom and the Discord. If you're watching on YouTube, this really doesn't pertain. I mean, if you're not in our team and you're watching on YouTube, this doesn't really pertain to you. But I guess it's still interesting to see our COVID response. And so here you're going to write your full name and your student number. This is just so we can identify you, so that if we do get a reply from the people, we make sure that you write the response, right? And that'll bring that consistent writing style. Personal email, and so we'll use this to forward the replies. So we'll send you a copy of each email you send. Make sure you get the replies to it so you can see what's happening. So make sure you put your personal email here. Again, not your school email because this isn't on our school email domain. This is using a Gmail. So make sure you put your personal email here. Again, full name, student number, personal email, and email subject. So the subject is pretty important. I haven't really touched on it in terms of the how to write an email part, but make sure your subject isn't like a whole sentence. Just make sure it encapsulates what you want to say in a short and sweet form so that they can easily see what we're doing and everything else, right? So maybe one thing you might want to add is sort of like a 3560 FRC within square brackets or something, right? And finally, we have our email content with the ending included, right? So the ending being thanks, and then your name, or like hope to talk to you again, and then your name, right? So just the ending, that's what I mean by the ending. And by markdown format, I would suggest you just Google it, but it's essentially the Discord formatting. So double asterisk for bold, underscore for italics, single asterisk for italics, and you can make lists and stuff. So I would suggest just Googling markdown format to really see how that works. But just put in markdown format, and I will compile that into an actual email, and we'll send it over to them, and if we get any responses, we can send them back to you. So that's just how we're going to deal with COVID, how we're going to respond, and how we're going to plan everything out. So I will put this email form on the Discord in the classroom. Again, not on the YouTube video because we don't want to get spam email forms. So just only use this once you've actually gotten in contact, and we'll get you guys updated on what companies to contact and everything. And speaking of companies to contact, actually, I do have another announcement to make. So the basics of how the game will work is there are going to be some fake companies that I will develop. And these fake companies will be based off of, real companies, but we'll just imitate them, impersonate them. So for them, you'll also write the same outgoing email form. And this is just going to be, towards, oh, I actually forgot to add the email that you're supposed to be sending it to. That's dumb. Hold up. Let me put this right here. The more you learn, I guess. So I'm gonna put this right here, and I'll call this the 2. Or yeah, I think this is the 2. Target sounds too sinister, so 2 works better. So yeah, here you just put in the 2, right? So you would send the email to whatever email account you would normally send it to, but we're not actually going to send it to those people. We're just going to say, oh yeah, this is a fake one, and you're going to do it within our own thing, and we'll set it up. So the reason why we have fake companies is that some people might not be comfortable reaching out with actual companies, right? They might not be that comfortable with the business aspect of things. So we can keep this sort of tame, and we can make sure that you're only keeping it within what's happening in our sphere of influence. So that's just how our COVID response is looking. Hope you guys have fun. Stay safe during COVID and this third wave, I guess, that's hitting us. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to leave a comment or ping me on Discord. And see you then. See you later. Bye.